Well, hey, friends, welcome back to the podcast today. This is podcast episode number 191, the one that I had to reschedule because I have my friend Jamie Ivey on today. Hi, Jamie.
Hi.
And
Me.
I think I was the first to have to reschedule on you. And then I think you had to reschedule on me.
This
And
is
then
how it works.
I know. And then today I'm like, okay, I have background noise going on because we're doing a master bathroom gut remodel. And I was watching your master bedroom bathroom remodel on the Instagrams.
It was
And
fun.
I got to say, it's lovely. How long did that project last? And did you want to poke your eyeballs out with a fork?
It lasted, I think it was like 3 eternities is what it felt like.
Yes.
Jen, we started that remodel on March 1st. No
Yep.
idea that on like March 12th, my kids would go on spring break forever. So Aaron
Forever and ever and ever. Amen.
So Aaron and I lived in an Airstream for 14 weeks. It took 14 weeks. We did 2 bathrooms and our bedroom. And it was in the middle of COVID. It just took.
Okay. So you two
longer.
lived there but you have a gang of kiddos.
We have a gang of kids. So we have 4 kids. They were all in their rooms. Their rooms
I
were
thought
fine,
you
not
had
touched.
more. Why did I think
4.
you were beating me when it came to kids? Oh,
well, thanks.
okay.
I have 2 dogs. Does that help? And then we have another human that lives with us. So we have our sweet 22-year-old friend that lives with us. So there were 7 of us in COVID, quarantined, with us not having a bedroom or a bathroom or anything. And we slept in an Airstream for 14 weeks. And it was the longest 14 weeks of my life.
I think you get something special in heaven. I don't know what it is.
So also, let me tell you, we went into COVID. That was also, I don't know how you guys handled quarantine.
Very poorly. Very poorly. Okay.
So it was like, oh, this is great. We're all together. And there's some, fun things that go along with that. It was probably the hardest season for our marriage. Probably March, we're like, oh, this is fun. We're all here. We're going on walks and we're doing this. And then April, May, towards the end of June, I mean, it was like, it was so very difficult for Aaron and I. And so I think when I look back on quarantine, I will have learned, how to live in an Airstream and, all those things, how to hold your pee all night long because the option is walking back to your house in the dark.
So Airstreams don't have toilets? They don't.
We never hooked it up. I mean, literally, we're like, we're going to be in here for a few weeks. It's parked right next to our house.
God bless.
But God really grew.
Isn't it going to be funny to think like when we get down the road 30 years and like the stories we'll be able to tell our kids about that one time back in 2020 and all the things that happened. And so
I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, you're going to have grandchildren that have to interview you for projects because you lived during 2020. They're going to be like, Grandpa, you were alive during COVID?
Exactly. So, so just like me, you decided to release a book.
Well, yours was, you didn't have a choice.
Yeah. Well, and I'm guessing you didn't have a choice either. I mean,
it's true, but I have a few months under my belt, but
and a few books. So, I mean, for anybody that doesn't know who Jamie Ivey is, let me just get professional here and read a little bit of your very professional bio. So you've got a new book out called You Be You: Why Satisfaction and Success Are Closer Than You Think. You are the host of the Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey podcast, which has 25 million downloads. Okay, I want you guys to wrap your head around that number, 25 million downloads. And, you have spoke at my event, Jamie, and I was supposed to speak at your event. Was it back in May before every stinking thing on the planet got canceled? And literally I was like kicking cans at that point. I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with some crap being canceled, but I was excited to come to Austin and do that.
We have this Happy Hour lives that we do twice a year. And I was so excited that you were going to be there in May. Yeah. And when we had to cancel that first one, we're like, okay, but September. Yeah. I mean, and then we got closer. We're like, there's no way.
Yeah. I don't know how God's going to, redeem all this.
But you got your event in before COVID.
We had to do it virtual. We had to completely shift it to virtual. We had to cancel, the venue, cancel. We had 400 people coming in and so that all shifted to virtual, which, you know what, it was fine because my jam is virtual anyway. Yeah. It's interesting. Like, I know we're going to, talk about some really serious things, but I love talking just about, some things we've all learned during COVID also. I actually have figured a couple things out while we were home on quarantine of how I do and I don't want to run my business going forward and what I do want to do and what I don't want to do going forward. And some of that came out of different things being canceled and us having to shift and pivot and do things a different way. And me going, you know what? Turns out I actually like this better anyway. Isn't
It's
that
so
weird?
true. I was talking to someone the other day about how we all had to we had to pivot real early. Like everyone
Yeah.
that runs a business had to pivot, whether it's a business like ours or it's like,
Yes.
the local printing shop in your town, whatever it is,
Right.
everyone had to pivot. And so
Yeah.
those pivots were hard. They were difficult, but I've also seen so many people say just what you said. And I've learned it too.
Mhm.
Okay. So after we pivoted and we did things differently, well, I think I'm going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
Like,
Why would I go back to that?
yes. And then you learned like, okay,
Yeah.
here's what matters. Here's where
Mhm.
my jam is. Here's what I
Yep.
love. And for
Yep.
some of you are like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait till we can get back and do things,
Yeah.
a few things how we used to do. But I've mostly heard people say, here's what I learned and here's what I'm going to do different. And they've
Yeah.
learned that through COVID.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely a silver lining through some of it. So, so I know your book came out just a couple of weeks ago. So I'd love to know, like, where the book idea came from. It's called You Be You. If you're watching on YouTube right now, I'm gonna hold up this beautiful cover. You look like a rock star, honey.
Oh, thanks.
And so don't you love like hair and makeup and
I was
professional
going to say,
people?
like, you can
No,
say there's a
you look
difference.
just like that today. If you're looking on YouTube, you look just like your photo. I, on the other hand, look at this. Like, yeah, I don't look like that.
There's a big team, guys. There's a big team.
There's a big team. But so tell me where did this book come from? Where did the topic come from? Where did the title come from?
Yeah, after I did a book in 2018, it was my first book, and it
Mhm.
was If You Only Knew. And
If
it
you
was
only
kind of
knew.
this,
Yeah.
it was my story. And it was, if you get one book to write before you die, those would have been the words I would have said. It was like just
Yeah.
me overcoming shame and fear and really trusting that God made me and could use me in spite of myself. So I did that, and I got to talk to a lot of women about it.
Yeah.
And I started hearing a very common sentiment. And I'm going to guess that you've heard this because of the work that you do. I started hearing people, mainly women, dissatisfied with their lives.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't even because they didn't like something about their life. It was because they thought they needed to be more like her. They
Yeah,
thought
100%. Yep.
their life, their job, their career, their family, their body, fill in the blank,
Yep.
needed to be more like her because she was quote unquote successful.
Yeah.
And so if they could just get to be like her, then
And
they'd be
nobody even knows who
satisfied.
her is, do they?
Of course not. Her
Right.
is somebody today and tomorrow it's somebody else.
Yes,
I mean, you know what I
exactly.
mean? It's like this
Exactly.
like imagination that we
Yeah.
create. And so I really just started to think, and I listen, I'm not pointing fingers here. Like I've
Right.
been through this and
Mhm.
struggled through this and had to learn. So I really wanted to write a book for women saying, hey, you can be you. You can be the person God made you to do. You have talents, you have passions, you have gifts, you have a voice.
Yeah.
Because also I saw a lot of women kind of upset at the way God had made them,
Mhm.
thinking that she was made better.
Yeah.
And her voice was better, her talents were better, her gifts were better.
Mhm.
And I hated that so much because I found so
Yeah.
many women refusing to walk in the gifts that God's given them because they're waiting and holding out to be more like someone else. And so this is
Right.
kind of this book that's like, no, girls, let's go. You
Yeah.
get to be you because Jesus has made you, he's made you unique. He's given you things that you need and he wants you to do something with them.
Yeah.
And that's where it came from.
Yeah. Do you run into people, Jamie? I know you're just like I am. You're surrounded by women, and women are, mostly. Do you have any men that follow you? I always joke that I have like two guys.
I mean, like 3% maybe on Instagram,
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
And I'm always like, thank you for the two of you, Brian
Yeah.
Dixon and somebody else. I don't know who it would even be.
But I
Even
do
my own
speak mostly
husband
to women because
follow
that's
me.
who's there. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But in addition to wanting to be heard, another sentiment that I hear a lot is, well, now I'm too old and
Mm,
I'm not thin enough and I don't look the right way, especially for my business owners who are trying to be on social media. And I'm an introvert. I'm not wired the same way. Therefore, I can't be successful, do what God wants me to do the thing, fill in the blank because I'm not the way that I think that I should be, which I'm always going back to them and going, yeah, but God knew that when he called you. Like he's
yeah,
not shocked that you are 56 years old and an introvert. Like that is not shocking to him.
so
And
true.
so do you run into this all the time with women?
All the time. And I always think like, I don't think, Jen, let me do some math here. I didn't release my first podcast until I was like 36 years old.
Okay.
And
I was
again,
46.
okay, so this is our point.
Yes. Yeah.
This is our point is that's when we stepped
Mhm.
into what we're doing now
Yeah.
and we're killing it. Both of us, we're killing it. We're doing what we want to do. We're doing what God asked us
Oh,
to do. We're
thank you for that. I need to hear that right now.
we are. We're being faithful to what God's
Yeah.
asked us to do. And we did that at the time and the season that he asked us to do it.
Yes.
And so I think that one of the reasons that people believe that lie is again, I go back to whoever she is, they've found this idea of
Mhm.
what it's supposed to look like. And they
Right?
think, well, if it doesn't look like that, I mean, I struggle with this. Let me tell you how I struggle with this. I'll be vulnerable for a
Yeah.
second. We're about to start doing some video stuff, not like video podcasts, but like video talk show interview stuff that we're going
Yeah.
to create. And I've had so many times believe that same lie of, I'm 42. I bet people want to watch and listen to someone in their 30s. And
Mhm.
I've had to combat that and go, no, that like, this is, I feel more alive in my 40s than I ever did in my 30s. And so I'm like, no, this is the time that I'm supposed to do this. This is when I have the resources. This is when I
Right.
have the maturity. This is when I have, you know,
Yeah.
the ideas to do this. And so I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to put to death that lie that says you're too old. You can't do
Yeah.
this. And
Yeah.
listen, 42 is not old.
It's
I
not.
literally feel like I just started, Jen.
Sometimes I'm like, why is God trusting me with all these kids and a mortgage? Like, aren't I still, you know what I mean? I'm getting ready to turn 50. And I'm like, how is that even possible? I remember when my mom turned 40, Jamie and I know a lot of our listeners are over 40. And my mom was a very young mom. So I was 21 when she was 40. And I can remember being 21 and my mother turning 40 and me thinking, oh my gosh, she is so old. And now that I'm 49, I'm like, she was not even like, it's just so strange. And because the older you get, the younger all of the ages
Oh
become.
my
Does that make
gosh. Oh my
sense?
gosh. When I
Yeah.
was a kid, I talk about this in the book actually, because I talk about that of believing that
Yes.
you're too
Yep.
old, this
Yep.
lie. And I remember we threw my mom a 40th birthday party,
Yeah.
a surprise party. My grandma helped me, and we all wore black, and we had like over the hill, or
Yes.
you know, all the
Yeah.
black balloons, and it was like a death
God
birthday
bless
party.
it.
And she was 40, and I'm
Did she
like,
forgive you?
I hope so. But I'm like, 40 is so young. I
It
mean,
is so
I
young.
giggle now when I think about that as
Yeah,
well.
it is so young. So I know you talk a lot in the book about the false definitions of success. So let's talk about that. And because I know that there's some people that they think the success is tied to their bank account. Success is tied to the number on the scale. Success is tied to, marriage or what else. So let's talk about like the false definitions of success, like you were kind of addressing them in the book.
I think that success is this word that can be scary to some people.
Mm-hmm.
And I
For
think
sure.
I've seen that a lot with Christian women is they think, do I have the right to be successful? What
Yeah.
does success even mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how am I successful? And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit, but I also wanted to say that we have this idea of once I hit this milestone, I can then call myself a successful fill in the blank, whether that be mom, business
Yeah.
owner, friend, wife, whatever it might be. But what I started to see, Jen, was I started to see that that milestone was constantly moving. It's like you wake up one day and the
Mhm.
world says you are a successful businesswoman if this is happening in your business. You wake up 2 weeks later and it's like, wait, we've moved the target. Now you're successful if this is happening.
Why am
And
I
so,
laughing? Because I'm laughing because that's how I feel like we're living in the current world with coronavirus. Like the
yes,
target,
yes.
like the goalpost just
You're like,
keeps
where am
moving.
I?
You're like,
Yes,
I could deal with it if I knew that the end date was X, and
100%.
right. And
Yep.
so you're saying the same thing about
Same thing,
women.
same
The
thing.
same, it just
And
keeps
I
moving.
always I always want to preface this is like
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of success. In fact, I want to be successful. There's nothing that I put my hands to that I don't want to be a success. I
Yeah.
don't show up at work every day hoping that everything's a failure. I
Right.
show up at work because I believe in what I do and I want them to be successful. So I want everyone to hear that too. This is not a conversation of like, oh, well, then you just like don't have to try and don't have to work
Right.
hard.
Mhm.
Absolutely not. But it's a mind shift for me. So I'm going to give you this example, and I've used it so much in conversations because it so says what I'm trying to say here. I've been podcasting for 6.5 years. About 4 years ago, I woke up one day and the people who were hosting my podcast, I don't remember exactly what happened, but the point of it is they said, hey, we've been measuring your stats this way, and we're now switching to this way. And for my particular show that was an hour long, my stats dropped 50%. They
Yikes.
told me I had 50% less listeners than I did the day before because they were measuring differently now. So that means on a Monday, I did my job and felt like a massive success. On a
Right.
Tuesday, I wake up, get the email, and I feel like a massive failure.
Okay.
So much so that I was like, I think I should quit. Like, this is dumb. Why am I doing this? And I had this internal conversation with God over the next couple of weeks that basically was this. I've never heard God speak to me, but just through the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit, I would feel like him asking me, Are you doing what I asked you to do? Yes. Are you faithful with the messages that I've given you? Yes. Are you working hard at what I've asked? Yes. And I really felt like, okay, my faithfulness equals my success. Because I'm choosing to be faithful every day,
Yes,
I'm
that's
successful
good.
at that.
That's
Now,
so
here's
good.
what now there's numbers and there's metrics in every business. No
Yeah.
matter if you're a podcaster or you're a teacher or
Mhm.
you own a small business, you have to meet numbers. Like
Yeah.
I'm not being dumb here. Of course
Right.
you do.
Right.
But my identity, my worth is not falling anymore based on that. Some more examples of, we would say that a successful mom is one who she gets up every morning and she takes care of her kids. And when they leave her house at the end of 18, they all love Jesus and they just follow him for the rest of their days. And then you'd be like, you know what? Pat on the back. I'm a successful mom.
Yes.
But that's not guaranteed to any of us. That's not guaranteed to
Yeah.
any of us. So can I be a faithful mom every single day, raising all of my kids and
Mhm.
still call myself a successful mom, no matter what the outcome is?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's I was just having this conversation this week, Jamie, with a friend of mine and a couple of my kiddos, and I was telling them, I have seen people, because if you're tying your success as a mother to the success of your children, boy, that's a dangerous place, because I have
Very
seen
dangerous.
really great mothers and fathers who did everything, I'm going to use this air quotes, right. Or
Yeah.
they tried to do the very best they could, and their children made really horrible choices and decisions. And you're like, what? How did that happen? I've also seen, and I would even, volunteer. Some of them live in my own house. I have also seen some people who have grown up in what is not the greatest parenting situations, and they have turned out to be incredible human beings as adults. And so, I think that we can only take so much success and also so much like blame for sometimes how things, turn out with our children. And so if we're going to tie our success to they turn 18 and they leave the home and they're serving Jesus, I mean, you know, because we can be really faithful, I think, in a lot of areas and still things turn
Yeah.
out different than what we hoped.
Yeah. And we can even do that with like I know a lot of your listeners are just like killing themselves running these amazing small businesses,
That's
and they're rocking it. Like they are showing up every day, even when it's hard, and they're making these decisions to serve their people and their audience
yes,
with whatever they're doing. What I want to encourage them with is to stay focused on what their mission is. Because when we
yes,
start to look, I mean, this is like biblical with running our
yeah,
race and like, running for the prize that is set before us. But when we talk about like from a business mindset, which you do so well, is like when you're looking and going, okay, so here's my business that I'm running.
mhm.
And then you start to look over and be like,
I
she's
know,
killing it. Look at how
yeah,
awesome she is.
yep,
And then all of a sudden, we're not concerned with our stuff anymore. We're
right,
just concerned with hers. And so
yes,
I just want to encourage them, man, stay focused. And listen, it's not that you can't learn. I learned so
uh,
much from listening to you and the stuff that you do. And I learned from other
thanks,
people, but I can't say I want to be Jennifer Allwood. I have
right,
to be Jamie Ivey,
yeah,
And so I can look at some things that Jennifer Allwood does and go, man, I really like the way her team is doing that. I've reached out to you before. We're like, hey, how's your team doing
yeah,
this? And help me out. But that's like mentorship. And
yeah,
that's like, getting
yeah,
advice. That's not
yeah,
going, what Jamie Ivy's doing isn't worth anything because it doesn't look like what Jennifer Allwood's doing. We can't live there. Once we live there,
yeah.
it's a death to our soul, death to our business, death to everything.
Yeah. So I know in the book you talk a lot about women using their giftings and what happens when we don't use our giftings. So can you talk about that, especially like right now? Because, it's interesting, Jamie, when we've been doing different podcasts, my team and I have had many discussions on, and for those of you listening, like here's how the podcasting world works. Yes, you want everybody to listen to your episodes as they come out, but that's quite possible a year from now, people are going to be listening to this episode. They're going to find it. And so, we've been wondering, well, how much we talk about where the world currently is, because hopefully coronavirus isn't like forefront in everybody's mind in a
Right.
year or two from now,
Next
and
year.
people will be
Yeah.
listening to this. But the truth is, like right now, there are some people that are really struggling to use their gifts because of where the world currently is, because everything kind of feels like it's on a pause and it's on hold. And so talk to me about using your giftings and what happens when we don't embrace our giftings, and how do we do that even in the middle of a pandemic?
Yeah, well, I want to say that just to let everyone know that it's hard. But
Yes.
I have said all the time, hard does not equal bad. It just means it's
Mm,
hard,
yeah.
And so things are hard. Things are hard at my house
I was gonna
today.
say, are you in a hard season? Girl, we're in a
Yes.
hard season.
Yes. I'm in a hard
Not
season,
hard
like,
season.
just releasing a book in the middle of COVID, that
Yeah.
like everything, it's not a matter of who releases, like the publishing world is different right now.
Yes.
We're having hard things at our house. I mean, just like
Yes.
life is hard right now.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, just to be vulnerable a little bit, I woke up this morning and I thought, I just did an interview, 2 days ago for something, and we talked a lot about contentment.
Yeah.
And they asked me, they said, "Do you think that we can find contentment here on this side of heaven?" And I always say yes and no. Like,
Yeah.
no, because like the world is broken and there's hard things and we're always yearning for what's
Right.
ahead. But yeah, because Paul says like we can find contentment because of
Mhm.
Jesus. And I
Yeah.
mean, literally before we started recording 10 minutes ago, I sent a text to a friend and I said, "I'm going to choose contentment today only because of Jesus." And so all that to say, like, it's hard. Everything
Yeah.
is hard right now.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is not,
I agree.
I interviewed someone earlier and I asked about COVID and she said, this, I'll never forget that. She said, it's like we're all in the same ocean of COVID, but we have different boats, which
Yeah.
means everyone's affected by it, but it
Yeah.
just looks different for everybody.
It does. For sure.
But using our gifts, I mean, I think that this conversation will outlast COVID for sure. And it was here before
Mhm.
COVID.
Yes.
One of the things that I thought about the reader as I was reading this book is there's one reader that I was thinking, okay, you know what I want you to do is I want you to focus on how God made you. And then there's another reader that I see a lot of women believe in this lie that they don't have enough.
I was what about the girl that doesn't even think she has any gifts? Because I
Exactly.
run into those women in my coaching group, Jamie, all the time. And first of all, my heart breaks for them because I'm like, oh girl, God doesn't like, skip over. It's not duck,
Yep.
duck, goose where he hits
Nope.
you and he's like,
Nope.
no gifts for this one.
Exactly, exactly. So, but here's where I think it gets a little bit confusing for people. I use the parable from Matthew where Jesus is talking about the parable of the talents.
Yeah.
All right. And so this parable, let me just give it a refresh. It's in the Bible, and a parable is a way that Jesus told stories when he was here. And so this one, he says, okay, there's a man who he leaves to go out of town, and with one of his servants, he left 5 talents, one he left 3 talents, and one he left 1 talent. So what we see here is he left them with all different
Yeah.
quantity of
Yeah.
things. He left, and when he came back, the one with 5 servants came to him and said, "Hey, I took what you gave me, I doubled it." And the master said, "I'm so proud of you." The one with the 3 talents came to him. He said, "Hey, master, I took what you gave me and I doubled it." He said, "I'm so proud of you." The one that got 1 talent, he came to him. He said, "Master, I was afraid, so I buried it. I did nothing with it." And he said, "Flee from me." I mean, he was
Yes.
angry at him.
Yep.
And the point that I see from that is that when I look at women, I'm like, you have been given things from God. You've been
Hmm.
given talents and
Yep.
gifts and a voice and influence. And listen, everybody has different quantities and
Yes.
different abilities and
Hmm.
different things that they're doing and different things that they're saying, but it's still exactly what God has given you, and he wants you to do something with it. It's the
Yeah.
quality of what you have and what you do with it over the quantity. And so people might
100%.
look at us and be like, "Oh, Jen and Jamie, like they have a podcast and they're leading these women, God must have given them more." Well, here's the difference: we just have different talents and we're using them differently. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Every woman has the ability to change her world around her, to change her business with exactly what God gave her. Will it be different? Of course.
Right.
Are there different talents that God? Yes, of course. I don't have giftings that some of my friends have. And I'm like, man, I wish I could do what she does on stage. I would be like a
Yeah.
phenomenal
Tell
speaker.
me one of the giftings you wish you had. I'll give you an example. I wish that I was better at like cooking and taking care of my family in that way.
Okay. Well,
I
I
can't
mean,
cook. I can't grow stuff. It makes me feel like I'm not, like that nurturing part. I don't know. Like,
yeah,
I see my husband cooking these delicious meals to feed our family, and it makes me feel very unmomish. Isn't that
mhm.
weird?
It's
And
not
but
weird at
I
all.
have
I mean,
plenty of
I know
other
what you're
giftings,
saying.
but
Yeah.
sometimes but I wish I had that one. Is there a gifting
Yeah.
you wish you had? I'm
I remember
curious.
when I had little kids, I was not a little kid lover, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like I have a friend right now and she has a bunch of kids and a lot of them are little. And the way that she gets down and like talks to them and like
Mhm.
it's like she can anticipate their emotions. I look back on my years of mothering and was like, oh my gosh, I did not have that gifting. But I mean, I don't cook either. I mean, when my husband goes out of town, I'm like, I'll miss you. And I'm also a little anxious about feeding all these people
I
everything,
know.
So, I mean, but like professionally, even, I mean, I remember when I just got started and people were inviting me to speak. And I have a lot of my friends way before I started doing what I do now. It's just, I don't know how, um, like teach the Bible and
Yeah.
speak. And
Oh
like,
yeah, girl,
girl,
you've got friends in high places Come on now.
And they were my
she doesn't even
friends.
call her. I'm gonna brag on you. She doesn't even call her Christine Kane. It's Chris Kane. They're close enough that it's Chris Kane. And I'm like,
And so, I mean, like, honestly, like, I don't know why I just have these friends that are doing amazing things. And I'll tell you, honestly, there was a couple of years where I just thought, God, I don't know why A, I'm friends with them, and B, I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing because I'm not as good as them.
yeah,
And I can honestly say that I've come into myself and knowing that when I get on a stage and speak, you're not going to get Chris Kane. You're
yeah,
not going to get Priscilla Shire. You're
yeah,
not going to get Jenny Allen. You're going to
yeah,
get Jamie Ivey. And I'm going to
yeah,
do the absolute best that I am, but
yeah,
I'm never going to be them. And that
yeah,
was hard for me,
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but now that I have accepted that, I'm like, can be proud of who I am.
Absolutely. Well, you killed it when you were on stage at our
Oh,
conference. So thank you for that.
mhm.
So tell me what Adam and Eve have in common with today's social media and selfie epidemic. I know this is a hard 90-degree turn, but I wanted to get to this question. I have a list of questions I want to ask you. So I know you talk about that in the book.
I always think of this, it goes back to this dissatisfaction and comparing a little bit. And when you think about Adam and Eve way back in, Genesis, at the very beginning, when God created the world and Adam and Eve are there in the garden, and it's kind of hard, honestly, for my mind to wrap itself around what that would have been like. But what it's the exact opposite of what we're living right now.
Right. Exactly.
The stress and the anxiety that we all woke up with
Yes.
today, none
Yes.
of that.
Yeah.
The worry about what's tomorrow, none of that. The worry about am I taking enough good care of my kids? Am I taking care of my body? Why do I look like this? None of that was there.
Yeah.
It's our minds cannot even understand what it was. And Eve, we know the story. The serpent, Satan came through a serpent and
Mhm.
tempted her, saying, "Hey, God must be holding out on you. There must be something better. Like if you really want this, you can just go for it." And I hope it's not a too big of a leap here, but I find that a lot in our own lives of we look around and especially with our world of social media and we think, man, God must be holding out on me. Like, I don't see why does he actually care and love me the way he does them,
Mhm.
her, that
Mhm.
business, that opportunity, that family, that child, that mother, because it feels like I don't have enough of what she
Yeah.
has. And so I kind of think about Eve wondering, wow, maybe there is more than what God has told me is best for me.
Mhm.
And I found myself in that kind of conversation of, wow, maybe there's something better out here. And listen, that's what leads people to midlife crises. That's
Yeah.
what leads people to leave their families. That's what
Mhm.
leads people into
Yes.
infidelity. That's what leads
Yep.
people into foregoing like their mission in life and letting go of maybe some of their I don't want to use the word their morals and saying I'm just
Mhm.
going to go do something else
Yeah.
because we think God must be holding out on us. There must be something
Yeah.
better.
There
And we
must.
see in the Garden of Eden that it resulted, in
Yeah.
the world we live in
Devastation.
today.
Yeah.
Here
Yeah.
we are because of that.
Yeah.
And so I just know that as my own heart yearns for sometimes more, I have to remind myself that God does actually have good things for me.
Yeah. Amen to that, sister. Amen to that. How do we discover our two callings? And I know that when you're talking about our two callings, it's not marriage, it's not motherhood. So let's talk about your two callings.
This is a big one for me because I think a lot. I mean, you and I both said I was 36 when I started my podcast,
Yeah.
and you were
46,
40.
girl.
46.
46. How
Yeah.
does this happen?
Yeah, yeah. And so I always say like the 20-year-olds are trying to figure out their calling. No, I think every decade you're trying to say, what am I here for? What am I
Yeah.
doing? What's happening? And so there's this kind of idea of what am I put on earth for? And I think that
Yes.
doesn't have it's not always just career either, but it's like, man, how am I
Yeah.
going to serve? What am I going to do?
Mhm.
Where am I going
Yep.
to pour my life out? And so we're constantly asking these things. And what is our calling? That's a big question that we want to know. And I really do believe that if you are a follower of Jesus, if you're someone who says, I'm a Christian, I'm basing my life on following Jesus, that we have an ultimate calling that never changes, and that is to make him known and bring him glory. These
Amen.
two callings, make God known and bring God glory. And so when I think about that, okay, my highest calling is to make him known and bring him glory. Everything under that, it kind of just falls into place. And
Yeah.
so no matter what I'm doing, if I'm writing books, if I'm serving in the PTA, if I'm married, if I'm raising kids, if I'm serving at my county jail, if I'm serving at the food bank, if I'm a
Mhm.
teacher at bank,
Yeah.
whatever it is, all of those callings, if I adopt, if I move overseas, if
Mhm.
I write a book, everything falls under that. And it's kind of like this safety net for me. It's like, okay, here's what I'm called to do is to make him known and bring him glory. Everything else comes under the place. Now, the soapbox that I could get on, Jen, is women believing that marriage and children are their highest calling.
Yeah. I don't know if, did you know, I quoted you in my book and because one day when I was writing Fear's Not the Boss of You, I'm on the Instagrams and you did a post. Yeah. And it just like, it kind of shook me. And it was, we can't teach our children to be sold out for Jesus if all our kids see is us being sold out for them. And I was like, whoa. Let me read that again. And I had to keep reading it because it was like, we're trying to, raise our kids in a good Christian home and, do what God asks you to do and go where he wants you to go and fulfill the calling that he's got in your life. But if our kids just see us like doing that with them and not like, that's a horrible example. And we're, supposed to be leading these kiddos by example. And so you did such a good job on that post, Jamie Ivey.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. That was from like, how do we raise kids in a gospel centered home versus a kid centered home? It was from a talk that I did based off of that. And I just know that I can't raise kids. And again, what happens when they leave here? Like, dear God, please keep them. But I can't pour my...
Girl, that has been my prayer. Sometimes when I don't know what to pray, just so you know, I pray, Lord, keep them.
Keep them.
Keep them.
Yes.
I said, just keep them.
I'm serious. Yeah. But I knew that I can't pour my life into only serving these 4 people and them. I mean, what would they think about serving Jesus if they left our home and the only way they saw their mom ever serve was serving them?
Yes.
I can't create followers of Jesus who are going to give their lives away from him. And their main example is a mom that only gave their life away from them. Yeah. And I love being a mom. I think it's one of like God's kindest things to me. It's not my highest calling. It's not, because here's what happens. If we say that that's a woman's highest calling, man, we leave out and neglect so many women in the church.
A ton of women.
And we do the same thing with marriage. If we say that marriage is the highest calling that God can give a woman, then what about my friend who's 37 and never married and not a mom? She's chasing Jesus in her life, in her opportunities. And so I think that those things come under that. But our highest calling is, man, I'm going to make God known and bring him glory.
Girl, this is why I love you. Okay. So I want people to go buy your book. And, but before I tell them where they go find it, can I ask you just like a rapid fire questions? And let me just say that rapid fire isn't nearly as fun, like post Corona.
What is fun post Corona, Jen?
Okay. So like, here's the first one. Where's your favorite place to vacation? I'm like, dang it. Remember when
nowhere.
Right. The garage. No. Okay. So for real, where's your favorite place to vacation when we get to vacation?
We went to Italy last summer.
Oh, I know.
It was a dream.
Did you know that I screenshotted a ton of it and it's saved on my phone under a folder called Vacation Goals? Okay, good.
Please go. It was so beautiful. We ate pasta, bread, and drank wine every day and did not feel a thing.
What could possibly be wrong with that? I mean,
it was the best 8 days of my life.
Okay. I cannot wait to someday pick your brain about where all the places I need to go. Okay. So your favorite food, I think I know this.
I mean, we eat Mexican food all the time.
Yeah.
Chips and salsa, enchiladas all day.
Do they serve anything else in Austin?
We have really great sushi too. Like we
do
love
you?
Sushi here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Your favorite book other than the Bible?
I read a book this summer actually during quarantine by Kristen Hanna. And it was called,
I don't know Kristen Hanna.
Oh, she's a fiction writer. I'm going to tell you if you can give me just one second.
Go to the Googles, babe. Go to the Googles.
I'm going to the Googles right now. I'm putting in Kristen Hanna. I'll keep talking while
my team thinks I need to quit saying things like the Instagrams and the Googles, and I'm kind of refusing because now that
I say the Walmart.
To 50, okay, me too. I'm like, I can say anything's funnier with the word "the" in front of me.
It is.
I keep saying.
I say the COVID.
Yes, the COVID. Actually, my mom does say the COVID not to be funny. She just does say that.
Oh, that's what she said. Okay, I say it to be funny. So I read a book called, I've read 2 of Kristen Hanna's book. I'm actually reading the 3rd one right now, but the one I read this summer was called The Great Alone. It was so good. If you need a fiction book to dive into and get lost in the characters and find yourself thinking how they're doing weeks later. I mean, I still wonder how her and her husband and her kid are doing.
The Great Alone.
The Great Alone. It was so good.
Okay. I'm totally going to look that up because I need something that's not a how to be a great business owner, how to be a
Yeah.
great mother, how to be a great Christian right
This
now.
is like a
So
bath bed read, like,
perfect.
that kind of way
Perfect.
down.
Okay. Last rapid fire. What's your favorite room in your house? You best say the room you just spent 9 million years redoing.
I love our bedroom so
Yeah.
much. It is
It's so
dreamy.
cute.
It's dreamy.
It is dreamy. Now,
It's full of windows with no
yeah,
blinds,
yeah.
and I'm down with that. It's great.
Okay. And people can't find your address on the internet, right?
No, I hope not.
Awesome. Okay. So tell them where do they need to go find UBU? Where would you prefer? And let me tell you guys something. I'm just going to preface this, Jamie, by saying this to my audience. It's a really difficult time right now for authors. I'm just going to say it. Book sales are down so far. And I remember at the beginning of coronavirus when our book came out and we were like, okay, all right. Well, we weren't sure what to expect. But across the board, book sales are down. And part of it is because was it 1,200 or 2,200 bookstores closed because of the pandemic. And then I know people are, holding their finances a little tighter and they're, nervous about some things. But listen, even if you don't have time to read a book right now, there are authors that I have supported in the last couple of months, Jamie, by buying their book, even if I don't have time to read the book, because authors need support at the moment. I'm saying that. I'm just going to put that out there. Authors need supported. And so we want to support you. How can we go buy your book or buy 20 and use them as Christmas gifts? Go.
You're so kind. I went to the bookstore the other day and bought 5 books of friends and was like,
I
I'm
know,
gonna
just
give
because
these
I'm
away.
like, I've just got to support some people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can get it anywhere. I mean, anywhere you buy books, Amazon, it can show up the next day. The cheapest price I've seen is lifeway.com. Actually, it's been like $12, which is kind of crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on Amazon, there's an Audible and Kindle version. But you can get it anywhere. And my webpage is jamieivey.com.
Yep.
Obviously everything is there. And
Okay.
I love Instagram.
I know. So if people are, if they want to just send you a DM and say, hey girl, I see you, I love you, ordering your book, go to Instagram.
You're
Let them
sweet.
go there.
Yeah. At Jamie Ivey. That's me.
Jamie, you're awesome. You're one of the few people that I've interviewed that I've actually met in real life. You've been in my home. If we lived closer, I think we would legit hang out. So thank
We
you
would have coffee every
thank you
week.
for you being you. Thank you for
Oh,
you being
thanks.
you and just for what you bring to the world. Honestly, love you, girl.
Thank you. Love you.
All right. Bye-bye.